Hello everyone! Tonight we're going to sail into one of the strangest corners of European history. An island where an emperor redecorated his exile like a man let loose in a luxury hardware store. Right now, you're standing at the edge of a tiny Mediterranean port. It's raining sideways. The waves are slapping the harbor like they're trying to remind you you're not welcome. Fishermen pause mid-net, eyebrows raised. The goat tied near the dock makes a sound that's either a bleat or a warning. Step onto Elba, not like a defeated general, but like someone looking around a terrible Airbnb and mentally redecorating. You probably won't survive this, at least. Not if you don't learn to laugh at history. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you really like what I'm doing here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Man, what time it is for you. Now, turn down the lights, turn on the fan to some soothing background music, and enjoy your evening ride together. The boat groans behind you as the sailors unload the luggage 13 trunks, a folding chair, and a hand-painted portrait of you, looking both heroic and slightly exhausted. You're wearing your second-best coat, because even in exile, imagematters.elba, it's smaller than you thought. More hills, more goats, less gold. The local guard assigned to meet you is wearing a uniform 2 sizes too big. He salutes, almost stabs himself with his bayonet, and offers you a half-limp bouquet. It's unclear if this is welcome or apology. You don't say much, not yet. You're scanning the port like a general reading a battlefield. The smell of whetstone, roasted fish, and disappointment hangs in the air. You're already imagining. Changes fresh paint here, some columns there, maybe a reflecting pool. Yes, this will do. Back in Paris, they think you're finished. You, the great Napoleon Bonaparte, reduced to ruler of an island you could walk across in an afternoon if you didn't mind. Hills and questionable cheese. But here's the thing, you're not finished. You're marinating. The rain slicks your hair back and soaks your cuffs. You hate that. Water is undignified. You shoot a glance at your valet who's trying to shelter the imperial hat under his coat. Too late, the hat now looks like something a wet cat slept in. The villa they've given you sits crooked on a hill with peeling shutters and a garden that's mostly rocks pretending to be plants. You step inside, take one long look at the cracked marble floor, and say nothing. Your silence is a blueprint. Your aides bustle in, awkwardly pretending this is a perfectly fine arrangement. One of them opens a window and shouts when a pigeon flies in and lands directly on your bed. You make a mental note, stronger windows, trained pigeons perhaps. That night, you sit in an overstuffed chair someone thought was continental and stare into a fireplace that smokes more than it burns. You're already drawing floor plans in your head. The world may have exiled you, but it also handed you a sandbox. And you, let's face it, are terrible at sitting still. Historians still debate whether this instant urge to redecorate was a coping mechanism or a strategic reset. Honestly, it was probably both. You'd conquered Europe in less time than it takes most people to renovate a bathroom. Now you had time, and a whole island. You wake up the next morning to sunshine and seagulls. Your first order of business. Breakfast. But not just any breakfast, one prepared precisely the way you like it. 2 eggs, half-burnt toast, and coffee strong enough to declare war. The cook tries, fails. You smile politely, then quietly draft a new menu plan. You take a tour of the island on horseback. Naturally, the saddle squeaks, the horse farts. It's humbling. The villages are simple. Cobbled streets, warm bread, stray cats who act like they own the place. You nod at everyone like a local monarch on casual Friday. Children stare. One of them bows, then immediately trips on a rock. You pretend not to notice. By the 3rd day, you've assigned titles to every room in your villa. The war room, the peace chamber, the nap salon. You order blueprints for a new balcony with a better sea view. You summon local craftsmen and start gesturing with your hands like you've got HGTV filming in the bushes. A carpenter asks what kind of wood you'd prefer for the new banisters. You answer with something proud, but subtle. He writes down walnut. One night, as the island sleeps and you pace the moonlit halls of your temporary palace, you stop before a dusty mirror. You study the reflections, lightly shorter than history remembers, but more awake than ever. This isn't defeat. This is the waiting room before a comeback. You whisper to the empty corridor, They'll see, and from somewhere in the walls, probably a rat, something squeaks in reply. Outside, the waves slap the shore in rhythm, like a clock you can't shut off. Your valet walks by holding swatches of curtain fabric. You nod approvingly. Tomorrow, the real fun begins. By sunrise, you're already pacing across the cracked floor of the villa like it's the ruins of a failed empire witch. In a sense, it is, but to you, it's just bad design. The furniture's mismatched, the wallpaper's peeling, the chandelier has a tragic lean. This isn't a palace. This is a cry for help. So, you do what any rational deposed emperor would do. You grab a sketchbook and start. Redesigning your Exile, you send your valet sprinting for the island's 3 known carpenters, and one highly suspicious man who claims to be a marble expert. You assign them stations like their infantry. You'll be taking the drawing room, you the terrace, and you, my friend, will remake the fireplace, or perish trying. By noon, you've got a full crew of confused locals watching you. Explain how a chaise longue should express both power and inner vulnerability. It begins. You tear down half a staircase simply because the angle offended you. You rehang paintings at exactly 1.78 meters your height because perspective matters. You start calling rooms, things like the strategic lounge and the gallery of moderate triumph. Aides whisper that you've gone mad. But mad people don't care about curtain symmetry. Fact check. Napoleon really did spend his first months on Elba overseeing renovations, redesigning gardens, building new roads, and importing furniture from Tuscany. One historian noted, he ruled Elba as though it were France in miniature. You walk the halls, pointing at corners like a commander planning flanks. This column is too self-conscious, you say. That sconce lacks ambition. The staff just nods and measure things again. And the worst part, you're loving it. The act of redesigning becomes your way of reclaiming control. You're not Napoleon the exiled. You're Napoleon the architect, the decorator, the highly island visionary. You order a throne not because you need one, but because a man needs somewhere nice to sit when exiled by Europe. You repave the road to Porto Ferreo so it stops wobbling like a bad souffle. You add arches to the outer gate, which the locals think looks fancy. You even order uniforms for your personal guard's sleek blue, sharp-lined. If you're going to pretend to still be important, you might as well look like it. There's a scene one day where you're standing in the garden with 3 types of gravel at your feet. You stare down like you're choosing between invading Austria or Italy. Finally, you point and whisper that the quiet gravel. You repurpose an old olive press into a wine cellar, plant lemon trees in military rows, and design a bathing room that's rumored to echo just right for speech practice. Historians still debate whether you were preparing for a second rise, just spiraling into imperial-level nesting syndrome. But there's something oddly beautiful in it all, even the mess. A carpenter brings you a sample of a wooden railing. You run your hands along it, nod, and then request more drama. He adds swirls. You nod again. Now it speaks, you say, as if talking about opera instead of staircase. Safety. You find one old amphora buried in the yard, lift it up triumphantly, and place it on the front step like a trophy. No one knows what it was for. It's probably Roman, possibly garbage, but now it's art. One day you spend an entire afternoon moving a single statue 12 feet to the left. You do it silently, with the solemnity of a man moving a chess piece. That will determine fate. That night, a servant hears you, muttering in your sleep. The molding must speak of legacy. It's becoming an obsession. Aides begin placing bets on what you'll redesign next. Someone jokes you'll start moving the coastline if given a big enough shovel. And here's the funny thing. Locals start getting into it. You hire painters, upholsterers, garden planners. Young men who used to fish now carve marble. Wives begin sewing velvet curtains instead of sails. The economy booms. The goat from part 1 now naps beneath a table made entirely of driftwood and ego. One elderly woman tells you, in a mix of Italian and awe, you make even Exile look important. You smile at that because she's right. You're not fading away. You're rebranding. At night, you walk the lantern-lit halls of your reinvented villa. The walls echo with pride instead of decay. Salt air, and for a moment, just a flicker you forget, You're not ruling France. You're ruling something, though, even if it's just curtain rods. And really, isn't that what history is? The ability to declare something meaningful and then paint it gold. It starts with a chicken. Not an especially remarkable one, just a bird that struts across your garden like it owns the place. It pauses near your redesigned marble fountain, which you now insist be called the reflecting pool of glory flaps. Once, and lets out a bored little cluck. You stare at it. It stares back. And somehow, in the middle of a sunny Elban afternoon, your mind makes a sharp left turn. I could make that chicken a general, you whisper. That's how the parade begins. Within a week, you've commissioned tiny uniforms, gold trim, red sashes, hand-stitched epaulets that would make any actual officer weep from jealousy or confusion. Your valet raises an eyebrow but says nothing. By now, he's seen worse. You line up 6 chickens named after ancient Roman consuls and begin drilling them daily in your courtyard. Marching music plays softly from a cracked violin someone found in the attic. Locals gather at the gate to watch. Children giggles. One man whispers, "I think he's lost it." Another replies, "He's never been clearer." Fun fact, Napoleon did obsessively manage every detail of his exile on Elba, including military, drills, symbolic pageantry, and the creation of elaborate events. The chicken part, unconfirmed. But honestly, would you be shocked? You expand the operation. Soon. Ducks are wearing tiny sashes. A goose is promoted to Admiral of the Shore. There's a drill schedule pinned to the hallway wall next to your map of Europe. Your aides, not sure whether it's a joke or a trap, pretend it's all very normal. You even hold a review on a warm Friday morning. You stand on your balcony in full regalia hat, slightly askew from wind, medals polished until they blind the coucond salute as the poultry brigade marches in loose formation past the citrus trees. One chicken breaks rank and poops on the gravel. You name it, Minister of the Interior. That night, you scribble in your journal, "There is order here, even in absurdity." Historians still argue whether you were simply entertaining yourself or creating a metaphor for lost command. Some say it was satire. Others say it was therapy. You just needed something that obeyed you again. The locals start to love it. They bring their own animals. A cat named Giuseppe is given a velvet collar and declared royal auditor. A dog joins in, her tail wagging with military precision. Children start training their ducks to curtsy. It's no longer madness, it's a movement. One merchant even knits a miniature tricorn hat for his prize goose, who now struts through the Sunday market like she's inspecting the price of melons. And through it all, you act as if this is the most normal use of exile time imaginable. You write formal letters to the officers of the livestock corps, sign them with a flourish, and seal them with wax. One of your aides reads one aloud and has to excuse himself halfway through too. Laugh behind a tree. But you don't laugh, you watch, observe, and beneath the absurdity, restore yourself. Routine is a bomb, even if it involves poultry. Then comes the day when a small delegation of local mayors visits your villa to discuss tax disputes. As you lead them into the garden, they are met with a tableau. 20 chickens standing in strict formation. You do not explain. You merely say they understand order. Now, what's your excuse? They nod, slowly. One writes something down. You never find out what. There's something oddly poetic about it. You've lost a continent, but gained a small kingdom of feathers, beaks, and accidental symbolism. You realize that power is not always in size, it's in attention. And yes, the chickens occasionally escape and terrorize the kitchen, but that's the price of leadership. One night, you catch your reflection in the tall hallway mirror. You're holding a brass pointer, dressed in your formal coat, a hen perched on your shoulder like a general's parrot. For a brief moment, you wonder if this is rock bottom or genius. Then the hen poops on your sleeve. You sigh, demoted. You say, "The hen blinks," and in that blink is all of Elba ridiculous, regal, and surprisingly healing. You sleep well that night, dreaming of banners and breadcrumbs. By now, the locals aren't even surprised when your Sunday dinner parties come with orchestras, matching silverware, and seating charts based on ancient Roman military hierarchy. Because if you're going to be exiled, you might as well eat like a god. Every Sunday. Without fail, the tables are dressed in starched white linen, candlelight flickers off absurdly polished spoons. You insist on dining al fresco even when the wind tries to blow your napkin into the soup. There's always soup, there's always a speech, and there's always that one poor aide whose job is to keep your bread plate at exactly a 45-degree angle to your wine glass. Yes, really, you measured, Dot. You stand at the head of the table, one hand tucked into your jacket out of habit, the other holding a glass of imported Burgundy. Your guests are a rotating cast of island nobles, confused diplomats, and anyone who looks like they know how to hold a fork without stabbing themselves. Welcome, you say. Tonight's theme is victory in simmered form. Dinner begins. The first course, eel, 6 different ways, stewed, smoked, diced, into a mosaic. One guest nearly cries. You call it a tribute to the Mediterranean spirit, though everyone suspects it's just because you were bored. Historical fact: Napoleon was known for his love of structured meals. Even in exile, he believed food was part of national identity. He used dinner parties to maintain influence and psychological control over his court. The second course arrives on silver platters, carried by waiters you've trained personally. You clap twice. They move like clockwork. One time, a spoon clattered to the floor, and you made everyone freeze for 6 full seconds. Discipline, you whispered. Even in hunger, guests laugh nervously, but eat everything. Some nights you hold trivia contests about your own campaigns. If someone forgets the exact date of Austerlitz, they must sing a patriotic song or recite your favorite legal reforms. You think it's charming? The guests think it's mildly terrifying. One evening, during a particularly dramatic thunderstorm, you recite Virgil between courses. Everyone claps. You call it table theater. You serve deserts sculpted like famous battlefields. The battle of Borodino, rendered entirely in sponge cake and raspberry glaze, causes a stir. One guest, trying to be polite, eats a cannon. He breaks a tooth. You apologize by gifting him a velvet handkerchief with your initials embroidered in silver thread. Not the first time that's happened. Even your menus are custom-designed each. One, a miniature painting, with a gold leaf on the corners and a tiny drawing of a crown over every end. The odd detail. You once made a guest swap chairs mid-meal. The balance of the room felt ... uneven, he complied. He later told his cousin he feared a second exile if he refused. These dinners aren't just indulgent, they're deliberate. You're shaping memory, even as your power fades. You're crafting a version of yourself that endures, one fork at a time. Historians still debate whether these gatherings were subtle acts of diplomacy, or just a coping mechanism dressed in crystal and gravy, but the food, genuinely excellent. One fisherman who got invited by accident said the lamb changed his life. I saw the future in that sauce, he said, probably exaggerating. Or maybe not. Your staff begins treating the events like military campaigns. There are charts, backup cutlery, and emergency olives stored in a secret drawer. You start assigning roles. One aide is in charge of applause, another of strategically timed compliments. Even your chickens are given roles, sometimes as centerpiece mascots, sometimes as reluctant servers in embroidered aprons. One night, you have a little too much wine and declare to the whole table, if the Austrians had eaten like this, maybe they wouldn't be so ... Austrian. Everyone laughs. Too hard. It echoes into the night. After the guests leave and the tables are cleared, you sit alone with the last candle, still upright in your seat, like the war isn't over, and the cheese course was merely a prelude to destiny. The moon hangs above the water like it's watching you specifically. You swirl your drink, sigh, and whisper to no one, I should have served pigeon. The chickens outside cluck in horror, and the island rests again. She arrives with a sigh. Your sister, Pauline Elegant, dramatic, probably wearing too much perfume for a seaside island, steps off the boat and immediately frowns at the humidity. It smells like disappointment, she says. You reply, that's just the harbor. She doesn't come alone. Behind her trails a man in a soft brown coat, no medals, no titles, just a beard and the kind of sandals that suggest he's been thinking too hard about trees. His name is Jules. He is, according to Pauline, a philosopher/listener. You suspect she means therapist, but Elba doesn't have a word for that yet. Just try talking to him, she says. You're one goose short of losing it. You scoff. You're Napoleon Bonaparte. You don't need therapy. you need more wallpaper samples. But the next afternoon, you find yourself walking through the olive groves with Jules, the wind humming through the branches, cicadas clicking like lazy clocks. He says nothing for a full 10 minutes, which feels like an ambush. You break first. I'm not mad, you say. Jules nods. I'm just ... bored. And maybe overqualified to rule goats. He nods again. Says, how does that make you feel? You glare at him like he just insulted your cavalry. And yet, you keep walking. Historical fact, Napoleon's sister Pauline did visit him on Elba, and they were reportedly very close. Whether she brought a philosopher is uncertain, but the emperor was known to indulge in philosophical conversation and introspection during exile. Over the following days, Jules keeps reappearing. During breakfast in the garden, once uninvited, on your new balcony, he asks strange questions. If you hadn't been emperor, what would you have been? You scoff, emperor. But of something else, he smiles. You hate him. And yet, there's something about his presenscom, steady, irritatingly unshakable, that slows you down. You start answering his questions. You even ask one or two back. What do you think power really is? You ask, one twilight evening, sipping espresso like it's a declaration. Control over yourself, he replies. You laugh so hard you nearly spit. Historians are still debating whether Napoleon found any new sense of humility on Elba. Jules says once, half teasing, half sincere, I redecorated an entire island. You reply, that's either humility or a new form of conquest. Pauline finds all this hilarious. She's taken up residence in a separate wing of your villa and hosts spa days involving seaweed wraps and dramatic poetry readings. One morning, she declares she's a priestess of renewal. You don't argue. You start walking with Jules every evening. Some nights, he reads aloud from Marcus Aurelius. You pretend not to be impressed. Other nights, he just lets you talk. About old battles, about Josephine, about the silence of the sea, and the fact that no one ever seems to refill the salt jar in your kitchen, and just once, you admit the truth. It's not that I miss power, it's that I miss motion. He nods. You could still move. He says, you look out over the hills, the roads you've paved, the chickens now wearing updated uniforms. Yes, you say, but not in circles. That night, you dream of your old war tent, the flapping canvas, the smell of ink and gunpowder, a chessboard half finished. You wake up and walk outside barefoot. Jules is already there, sitting by the citrus trees. He doesn't speak. You both just breathe. By now, your dinner guests salute the chickens without irony. Your sister is reenacting Greek tragedies in a satin robe. And you've had exactly 7 arguments with Jules over whether fate is a sword or a river. But something still itches in your chest. Not pain, not nostalgia, just the deep imperial discomfort of stillness. So naturally, you build a navy. Not a real navy, mind you. You don't exactly have a fleet of 74-gun ships on standby. What you have are fishing boats patched up creaky, smelling like squid butt, they'll do. You gather the island's fishermen and declare you're now admirals. One of them coughs. Another tips his cap. A boy holding a lobster looks confused. You draw up plans for naval drills. One gets painted gold and christened with champagne, which you later regret wasting. And every morning at dawn, you stand at the dock with a brass telescope, shouting orders like a man preparing for war. Or a very competitive regatta, historical. In fact, Napoleon did organize a miniature navy while on Elba, complete with flagships, uniforms, and scheduled patrols. He was obsessed with military readiness even in exile. The rowboats are rigged with colored flags and lanterns. You design uniforms for the crew white linen with blue trim, ridiculous hats that blow off if anyone sneezes. You assign ranks, captain of currents, minister of oars. A crew mistakes a goat for a spy. Still, you're proud. They're learning. You sketch new formations on napkins at lunch. Historians still argue, was it satire, theater, or a genuine effort to feel like a leader again? You'd say all of it and none of it. And also, the oars were too short. You commission a trumpet fanfare. For naval inspections, the trumpeter has asthma, so the notes come out wheezy, like a goose with a grudge. Still, you stand tall. You salute every boat, every boy in uniform, every fish that jumps near the flagpole. You even write a constitution for your Elba Navy. Article 1, no mutiny during lunch. Islanders begin arriving with picnics, just to watch. it becomes the strangest form of entertainment. Sunday Naval Parade. One old woman brings a folding chair and rates your maneuvers with signs that say, too splashy or perfect stern. You start narrating the drills aloud, like a bedtime story. Here, we see the valiant petty Neptune attempting a flanking row. Oh no, they've tangled oars again. Truly, the spirit of Austerlitz lives on. You're not mocking them, you're admiring the commitment. The joy in absurd order, the comfort of being the commander again. If your empire now smells like seaweed and bad fish jokes, one boat accidentally sinks slowly, even if it's floating. You assign Jules the honorary title of Chief Naval Theorist. He accepts it without blinking and adds a footnote to your naval charter. All movement is escape until it isn't. You roll your eyes and buy him a captain's hat. The highlight of the month is the simulated sea battle. Two teams of rowboats, armed with soft apples, go head-to-head in the bay. Judging every splash, like Neptune having a midlife crisis, the winners are awarded hand-carved oars. The losers get a consolation eel. You make a speech about valor and hydration. A chicken gets too close to the cider and passes out. And that night, as the waves gently slap the hulls of your ridiculous navy and the lanterns flicker like drifting stars, you finally feel calm, not conquered. Just calm. So here's the thing about power. It's not just about armies and flags. It's about fabric. Or at least, that's what you decide one morning while staring at your reflection and thinking. This jacket is beneath me. Need uniforms? You say to no one in particular. New ones, better ones, fashionable ones. That whisper of empire, but also whisper of velvet. And just like that, Elbon Fashion Week is born. At first, your aides think you're joking. You're not. You commission tailors from Florence. You sketch designs like a man possessed, gold buttons, crimson cuffs, lapels that say, I've seen things, and waistcoats so tight they cause your valet to faint briefly upon first fitting. You call it imperial casual historical fact. Napoleon did design new uniforms while on Elba, even for a personal guard of 600 men. He remained obsessed with symbolism and appearance even in forced retirement. You unveil the prototype at breakfast. It's majestic, midnight blue, brass trim, and an absurd number of medals, many of them fictional. The boots are polished, too. The point of spiritual clarity, you stand, spin once, and ask too much. Everyone claps. Then you decree that Sunday markets are now used. Every merchant must wear at least one article of official imperial casual, or risk a fine of 1 imaginary franc. The farmers love it. A man who normally sells onions now struts in plum-colored trousers and a bicorn hat. A grandmother knits her own sash, declaring herself commissaire of carrots. Someone embroiders Vive la Fashion on a pig's blanket. You're thrilled. You begin hosting runway inspections. Not just parades anymore, catwalks. On a makeshift stage in the village square, locals stomp in handmade uniforms to the rhythm of spoons on pans. You provide commentary like a sleepy emperor turned fashion critic double quotes. Ah, see the posture. The menace in that shoulder line? That's how we retake Europe one hemline at a time. You start assigning fashion titles: High Button Chancellor, Duke of Double Stitching, Admiral of Accessories. One man shows up in a cape so large it trips 5 people. Unite him odd detail. There are rumors that you designed a secret evening line for chickens. You deny it. But Pauline finds tiny velvet booties in your study. You change the subject. Soon, sketches of new looks fill your study uniforms for every possible moment of exile. Late afternoon glory, melancholy but polished. Dawn parade, but make it rainproof. Jules catches you matching color palettes to naval flags. You pretend it's strategic. He says nothing, but sips his wine and raises an eyebrow that speaks 5 languages. Historians still debate whether this was vanity, psychological projection, or boredom wrapped in silk. Some argue you were preserving dignity through design. Others just really like the buttons. You order a full portrait of yourself in imperial casual. It hangs in the new dining room, just above the bread station. Every guest must bow to it before touching the jam. Pauline hosts her own fashion salon and critiques people's collars with ruthless elegance. A chicken walks the runway wearing a cape. The crowd loses it. The island now looks like an alternate timeline where military coups are settled via fabric swatches. It's glorious. One morning, as you admire your boots in the mirror, Jules appears. "You've built a kingdom from clothing," he says. You grin. Cloth is memory. He tilts his head. And epaulets are truth. You smirk. Only on Tuesdays. Walks away chuckling, muttering something about madness and embroidery. But you're not mad. You're tailored. That night, under the stars, you host the first ever ball of strategic elegance. Lanterns sway in the trees. Musicians play something vaguely operatic. Guests waltz on the marble terrace in embroidered jackets and feathered hats. You take Pauline's hand, bow low, and whisper, "We may be forgotten, but we'll be forgotten in style." And in the quiet between string notes and sea breeze, you wonder if maybe just maybe style is its own kind of rebellion. You've redecorated your Exile, drilled a navy made of fishing boats, invented a chicken-led military parade, and launched a fashion empire on an island the size of a wealthy Arden. But every fantasy comes with a curtain call. It begins with a whisper in the hallway, a letter folded twice with a seal broken by nervous hands. The message is simple. France is trembling. The king they installed in your place is ... not beloved. The people whisper your name again, not like a curse, but like a song they almost forgot the words to. And suddenly, you start planning like it's a dinner party. Seating, logistics, whether escape, but make it look like theater, historical fact. In February 1815, Napoleon did escape Elba, landing in France to reclaim his empire for the famous 100 Days. His departure was bold, swift, and shrouded in just enough flair to become legend. You hold your final Sunday dinner like nothing's changing. The eel makes a final appearance. The forks still sparkle. Pauline pretends not to know. Jules watches you a little too closely. Even the chickens march, their tiny boots oiled and ready. You toast to tomorrow. No one dares ask what that means. That night, the dock is quiet. Lanterns are dimmed. The boats are loaded with just enough provisions, just enough wine, and far too much silverware. The gold-painted rowboat leads the way like a confused herald. You step aboard in your best boots and most silent cloak. You don't say goodbye, you just vanish. The sea is glassy. The stars above blink, unsure whether they're witnessing tragedy or comedy. Your aides row with grim determination. Someone starts humming. Jules, surprisingly, is aboard too. "I thought you hated movement," you murmur. "I hate stagnation more," he replies. Historians still debate how you pulled it off. Did the guards turn a blind eye? Were they bribed with velvet, hats, and title scrolls? Did the chickens distract them? Was it the wine or the charm? You never explain, and you never will. .elba sleeps behind you. Quiet, transformed, still layering your legacy in lapels and lampposts. The last thing you see, as the island recedes, is the glint of moonlight off the reflecting pool of glory. Your reflection, if only, for a moment, stares back. Then it's gone. France awaits again.